Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Tuesday, September 12th, 2017 edition of VR News. We hit a very cool milestone on this channel. If you don't want to listen to me blather for about 90 seconds, go to the description, find the first news story of interest to you, click on the starting timestamp, and you will be transported there away from this. If you're still here, just want to thank you guys really quick. This channel hit 1 million views as of this morning, which is awesome. There's a couple of metrics that people use to gauge YouTube success. One of those is subscribers, and that's probably the biggest. Not necessarily the most important, and I'll explain, but it's the biggest. There are a lot of people who will judge a YouTube channel's content strictly based on the subscriber count. If it's not high enough, very often they'll just ignore it. That's the sad reality, and rightly or wrongly, that's the truth. Well, the problem is when content creators start a channel, they tend to get anywhere from 1 to a few dozen initial subscribers, mostly made up of family and friends. The problem with that is they usually never end up watching the content. Case in point, my buddy Exity, he's like a brother to me in real life, absolutely. But I can call him a lazy arse right now because I'm that confident he's not watching this video. And I don't blame him. He doesn't have VR himself, but even if he did, it might just not be his cup of tea. Fair enough. But, he'll throw me the odd thumbs up, and if he's in it, he may watch it. So subs, not really a perfect indicator. Views, much better. And that's why for a lot of content creators, that's the one that counts. So busting through 1 million today was awesome because 1 million, it's a big number. I remember as a kid trying to count to 1 million. I'd start off each night to go to sleep where I left off the night before. Never made it to 1 million. I think somewhere north of about 10,000. That was it. With that said, I'm going to shut up now and just thank you once more. Your support and views, much appreciated. With that said, let's dive into the VR news, starting with this first story, Hurl VR, a Vive-only game where the object of the game sounds simple. Get a ball into a goal. However, to do that is going to require a lot of skill navigating the game's various puzzles. Sometimes it's pattern matching or ricocheting balls off panels, but mostly it's both and at the same time. There's yellow panels that can launch your ball far and wide. There's wormholes that transport it into other areas. Physics puzzles in this game, the order of the day. Now, Hurl VR, perhaps an unfortunate name because it evokes something pretty unpleasant, but in this game, you need to be strategic. You got to step further back or closer to get the right body position for the most effective bounce for each panel. It can be a frustrating game, but the devs have thrown in something called assists with a specific time limit assigned to them that you can use strategically and sparingly. Like I said, this game, Hurl VR, out for HTC Vive. Next up, we have the Otus Tracker. This is a new device from RC Benchmark. They're a Canadian company, and it allows a user to track a drone's position indoors with sub-millimeter accuracy, which is pretty damn good. How it works is base stations are set up just like you would a room scale configuration. So one of the negatives is it's confined to that type of scale. However, the tracker is then added to the drone, and it's a very, very lightweight tracker. Developers can then write their own code to control the drones. The Otus Tracker comes with plugins for C++, generic C, C#, Python, and a few other languages. The motion capture, impressive, even if there are only a limited number of use cases for drones in this type of enclosed space. According to the lead developer Charles Bluin, for UAV designers, the accurate measurement of position and orientation is critical to the development of control algorithms, to improving vision and sensor fusion code, to controlling a drone precisely indoors, to studying robot cooperation, swarm robotics, etc., and much more. Until now, the only solution has been to use camera-based motion trackers, which cost tens of thousands of dollars to obtain the same tracking area provided by our Otus Tracker. Next up, we have Virtuix's Omni treadmill. This is a treadmill that we've talked about at least 3 or 4 times on this channel. I've done a 180 myself on this type of device. I'm now more interested in the wireless aspect than I am in having a treadmill. And I've said before, I know there's a few of you that do have one. It's a hard sell for these guys, but Virtuix did something today that I thought was pretty cool and wanted to share with you guys. Today they announced Omniverse, and it's a content delivery and arcade management platform intended for use by commercial Omni operators, but of course doesn't have to be limited to just arcades. It could be home users as well, that quickly shows you which applications support the Virtuix Omni treadmill. Right now, there's 16 games available, more to come in the future. You've got games like The Manor, Soulkeeper VR, Primordian, and a bunch of others, but 16 titles. As they build on that, they will get added to this. Yeah, like I said, I really like this. It's an uphill struggle to sell this outside of commercial facilities. Any little thing they can do to make it less daunting, because let's face it, your trouble doesn't stop after you pay your shipping bill for these things, because they're frickin' behemoths. It's where and how can you use it? So anything that can streamline that portion of it, clarify things for a new owner, is only good in my books. This next story involves Quake 2, and it's kind of fitting because we talked about Half-Life yesterday. Well, Quake 2 came out at a time when the PC graphic card wars for 3D acceleration were an absolute full-bore tilt swing. They were literally going nuclear. There were probably about a dozen various graphic card manufacturers. Going to name a few. You've got Trident, Diamond, SIS, Matrox, NVIDIA and ATI, of course, 3D Labs. Believe me, I could go on. They were all doing battle for the various solutions. Now, we know how that ended up. We've got the hindsight of 20 years behind us now since that date, and it's basically the NVIDIA and ATI show. But back then, there was no certainty because a company that NVIDIA ended up purchasing a lot of their intellectual property, 3D Effects, ruled the roost. It wasn't ATI or NVIDIA at that time. But Quake 2 was a game that was fantastic for benchmarking. You would buy a new card because, let's face it, the single-player campaign was finished quickly, and then you would just use that program to benchmark future purchases. I did that for about 5 years after I finished Quake 2. Well, Swedish YouTuber, fellow virtual reality YouTuber, making a very cool discovery that Quake 2 is playable via the HTC Vive, and I believe it's playable as via the Rift as well. He limits to Vive content, and indeed that's what his video is showing. In the video, he includes instructions on installing the mod for yourself. So if you have a Vive, you can do that. I will try to find Rift instructions as well for those of you who have Rifts. Once you're in, you've got all the features that you would expect. So whereas the Half-Life one that I talked about yesterday was really rough and early, stuff like the scale didn't even work, think of this more like the Doom BFG. It's working beautifully. Seated or standing is supported, 180, 360, comfort tuning on and off, in other words, the motion sickness type settings. Aiming can be tied to head tracking, to mouse look, to gamepad, or even the Vive or touch controllers, which is freaking awesome. Auto crouch uses head position to determine if the player is crouching or standing. You've also got super sampling available, because keep in mind, this is a 20-year-old game. And saying that, believe me, that's scary as hell that 2 decades have passed, because I remember it like it was yesterday. You can download an HD texture pack as well to kind of spruce up the looks a bit given its age. Now, I'm one of the lucky ones. I still have this game. I have my original, so I'm going to use that and test this out. If you don't and you're interested, you can pick it up via Steam for $5 US. That's $4.99. Now, I know I just talked about this the other day. We talked about Half-Life and I had missed this one and then found out about this, but it's case in point what I was talking about. There's going to be hits, but there's going to be misses with converting older games to VR. Whereas Doom BFG personally really excited me because I didn't really enjoy the initial Quake 2 single-player campaign. My initial reaction on this was, okay, that's kind of cool, but you know what? I'm going to wait for the Far Cries or the Fears, as one of you mentioned in yesterday's comments. That would be more my kind of cup of tea. But with that said, I'm going to follow my own advice, and that is try it in VR, even if I didn't like it in non-VR, because that whole new visual stimulus, way of perceiving and experiencing the game is nothing like it was. I'm going to do that, and I'll report back on that. Guys, that is it for the news on this Tuesday. I want to thank you again for the 1 million+ views. As always, cheers.